Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Cincinnati School Board's, we call Finance Committee, but really its total title is Budget, Finance, and Growth Committee. We meet on a monthly basis about this time and date. And we're going to go around and introduce ourselves, and then we'll get right to the meeting. We have a lot to discuss today. I'm Eve Poulton, a board member, and to my right is...
Good morning, everybody. I am Jim Crossett, board member.
Good morning, Michael Guston, Treasurer and CFO.
Liz Martin, Assistant Treasurer, Controller.
Kevin Ashley, Director of Financial Reporting and Transparency.
Emma Mueller, Internal Audit Supervisor.
Phyllis Davis, Board's Administrative Assistant.
Rob Wilson, Technician. And if you'd like to speak during the speaking of the public part of this session, please click the hand icon. We'll invite you over at the end of the meeting to speak.
Thank you, and Madam President.
Emily Bell with ASME, Local 232.
Good morning, Karen Imbus, Cincinnati Federation of Teachers Field Representative.
Adam Gepner, Director of Business Technology.
Nan Hagood, Federal Programs Manager.
I think we're all here. The superintendent is not in attendance today because she is participating in Leadership Cincinnati. And we're excited for her to be doing that and very excited to be sharing her with the leadership of Cincinnati. We'll begin and we'll get right to the agenda if it's all right. Does anybody have a particular thing regarding timing that they need to be early or out or hard stop? We have lots of wonderful discussion and lots of information to share. Treasurer, you want to get us started?
Sure. We'll start with old business. First item on the agenda is a committee work plan. So in your packets, you have an updated version of the work plan. Thank you, board members, for submitting your feedback. So we did make a couple of adjustments. Probably the big things to point out, I would like to, if it pleases the committee, to move the March meeting to the 27th. Which is also my birthday, so we can plan
We have
ahead.
to have a party or?
Of course, yes. of
Okay.
course. So we'll put, and then also the
Ms. Davis, do remember that, as we have to have a birthday party for the treasurer. Everybody knows we have to keep the treasurer happy.
Thank you, ma'am. And then the other meeting we talked about is moving the June meeting to the 12th. Because our regularly scheduled date would conflict with the Juneteenth holiday. And so I think the idea is to move it earlier, which is good because we have a lot of things to work on in June. And I think we'll do that immediately following the policy committee.
Does that work for folks? Just started, just did the introduction. This is Member Mapp joining us.
Please excuse me.
No problem.
The only other thing I would say about the work plan, just heads up, is that the new the 3-year forecast, the budget and 3-year forecast for the second half of this year gets moved to August by law. So that traditionally was in November, the November meeting, and now it's moved back to the August meeting. So.
And that's reflected in the new work plan?
Yes, and reflected in the financial transactions requiring board approval as well.
Great.
So,
Mr. Crossett?
Does that move actually benefit the planning to have it that timing or not? Or doesn't
No.
matter?
not at all.
Okay. I was ever hopeful.
I'm sorry, that's my, I'm sorry, that is my personal opinion, but I will.
Okay.
What is the last board date in June? Do you know offhand?
22nd.
So we will be able to maybe present some year-end stuff ahead of that at finance. Just my thought.
There's always the July meeting that sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't happen, so.
And so we moved the Juneteenth one.
Yes, to the 12th.
Okay. And so the 12th would be when this committee would be talking about what Kevin's mentioning.
Yes.
Okay.
Because we have to do year-end advances,
Right.
appropriation changes projected out through June 30. So we'll have to do those at the last board meeting, so that'll give us it'll still give us an opportunity to do that ahead of the board meeting.
Okay. You know, my interest is making sure that most of these things take place that deal with financial aspects, take place at finance before they go to the board. I think that works best, have the deeper and broader discussion, and then move them to the board. Keep that in mind, and have the president be aware, and as a longtime member of the finance committee, he probably is aware, but make sure he knows those hard, fast dates, not just of our meetings, but most particularly when we have to take action on things. Members have any other questions or suggestions regarding the work plan? Thanks for submitting suggestions. Now we'll go to treasury evaluation. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I think excuse me for my tardiness, but I think you were really just kind of speaking on that. So anything that is obviously discussed, we'll, preview the information in committee, but any pertinent information will be shared out to the full board. So maybe prior, maybe a presentation or so ahead of time so that the full board can be aware of kind of those pertinent issues that are coming up. Is that what you were speaking about?
Yeah, for example, even today, it didn't work out this way, but ideally, and we're going to have some dialogue about the capital improvements and the maintenance plan or whatever today, but ideally, it would have been a good discussion about that prior to Monday night's big presentation. Not that it's the same presentation, but that way the administration has some sort of preview of what some of the questions and the interests might be, and they can be more prepared for their presentations. Yeah, we don't try not to duplicate the presentations, but it seems it works best if there's at least 3 stages to everything.
Yeah.
And we want to be able to do that, especially at this time when we're talking in terms of budget and strategic plan. Thanks for the
Perfect.
clarification. I
Yeah,
appreciate
wanted
it.
to make sure I was tracking with you.
You are tracking with me. Okay, the evaluation. Mr. Treasurer, you have introduced this and we've gone through it and we've made some suggestions and you're back with us about what to be doing about it.
Yeah, so I think last meeting I presented kind of a mid-year or kind of a mid-year up to date. I believe board members were going to kind of do some work on the scoring tool. I think Mr. Crossett was going to pull the scoring tool that was used for the superintendent and kind of share that with the committee. And you guys are going to have some internal committee discussion.
There you go. Mr. Crossett?
Yes, the scoring tool is in process.
Okay,
I'm not prepared for that for today,
okay, well,
but I can get that ready fairly quickly, and do we distribute that before the next meeting, or how soon what's the timing on that?
We have to, at some point, we're going to have to, President Craig found a kind of a glitch in our policy as we changed the evaluation policy, but I don't think it lines up with my contract, so there's some work on that.
Right.
But from my perspective, I would, obviously always appreciate feedback, and I think this committee is very good at giving feedback, both kind of written and just conversational, which I certainly appreciate. I think for me, my kind of next big step is looking at redoing my goals. So having feedback for next meeting and then maybe presenting goals in March, because the evaluation timeline is now really like January to December, if you think about the things. So looking at the current goals, I think some of them kind of carry for the year. Some
right,
of them,
and some
of them need to change based on all the things in this world that are changing. So my hope would be to bring you some draft goals in March. And then hopefully if you could bring me some kind of consolidated feedback at the same time, I think that would put us in a good spot.
Mr. Crossett?
I think the scoring tool generally has to relate to the goals. And so I could draft a preliminary scoring tool with the existing goals.
Yeah.
Would that be helpful?
That would be helpful.
Okay.
That would be helpful, and I would align it as best can with the superintendents. So to meet with Paul McDowell about that would be great.
Right.
For me, about the treasurer's evaluation, I think one of the things that is interesting, and he and I have had one conversation about this. Superintendent has, I think, high stakes results within her evaluation. And the treasurer reminded me, well, I'm not going broke would be one of the high stakes. And I appreciated that comment, but it's there, you might have more control over that than necessarily the superintendent has control as to whether or not the children are learning. But I think I do like the idea of using the standards in the state of Ohio for a specific purpose, and that is the feedback that can occur. It's easier for board members to have opinions and expertise for the superintendent. But so much of your stuff is so technical and it's in terms of language and whatever, that the best way we have an opportunity to really influence or share our thoughts about what you're doing is almost through those standards. And so I much as best as possible, at least providing that commentary part to the evaluation. As I know you've included the standards like leadership and financial management and stuff, but I think that's where we get to really participate a little bit more. I think would be helpful.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. The superintendent's scoring tool has a section related to the standards, so we can just mirror that here. Or it may even be more prominent here, but certainly it would be easy enough to
Great.
use it.
Yeah, I think it was a preference, I think, a previous discussion where kind of having that simulation of like what the superintendent's evaluation looked like. So yes, obviously there will be some quantitative, type of metrics in terms of the goals that you'll work on, but that standards piece also does help as well as to give us, give us that room and space for that commentary. So, and again, I know from the outset, you ultimately shared your interest in having it pretty much aligned to what the superintendent's evaluation looks like.
Great. And I think this is thanking policy over the last year and a half, getting us on track almost. And regarding the evaluations, and that continues to be a discussion regarding general counsel. So this is good stuff as best we can do
I
it.
will if you allow me a minute.
Please.
I think we do need to give the board some credit for the evaluation of both the superintendent and the treasurer. And the reason I say this is one of the things that exists is this it's kind of like a listserv, if you guys remember those from the old days, but there's this daily email chain from OASBO, which is the trade group for school treasurers. And one of the threads I thought funny in the last month was about treasurer evaluation tools. And different school districts shared their treasurer evaluation tools and the level of difference. I mean, a lot of these were one page. One page, what are you doing well, what aren't you doing? I mean, very, very simple, very kind of unstructured. And I think it's a credit to our board that they've put so much work into these evaluations and brought them up to a high level of professionalism.
I agree. I think it's great. I think it's important. It allows us to focus where we're really supposed to be focusing, is that level. So great. And so I don't know if we want to repeat the month and date time for Ms. Davis as to this next month, what would be on the agenda for your evaluation? Is that Mr. Crossett reporting back
Yes. And
on the scoring tool?
maybe get that distributed to everybody well before the meeting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Sure.
So that'll be on for March. And anything else there, Mike?
I will have a draft set of goals for the calendar year 2026 for you to review.
Great. So that'll be March. We'll make sure that gets on the agenda. Super. Any other additions or comments about any of that? All right, let's move on to our monthly reports, if we can. And we go to our star stage and screen for that.
Today will be Kevin Ashley Day, so
Kevin Ashley Day. He's got them all.
We should do a resolution.
We should have had a party for today.
If
And
we
I won't-
bought a cake for Rob, we would have had a party.
And I won't be here next month, so I'll
Oh,
miss, I'll
Lord.
miss the party.
Oh,
All right, so we'll kind of go quickly on this since we'll
Okay.
probably spend a little more time on the forecast. But I'm gonna start with the overall general ledger total, which at the end of January was 92.3 million. Kind of looks pretty similar to December, except we spent down some cash. And so I'll go on to the next slide, and you'll see the general fund was very low at the end of January. That's our cash flow desert.
Low spelled with like 4 letters.
Yes.
Low.
Yes. So I mean, really that put us in a, a difficult spot. And we were, really monitoring that. We had some opportunities, we could have accessed some cash if we needed to, but hopefully, not with the current forecast, but hopefully at some point this will be less of an issue going forward, we hope.
Is there a reason that happened?
So I was gonna say, a couple things that contributed to that. We did have a 3-pay month in January, so we had that extra payroll at the end of the month.
that's about what, extra 13 million
Yeah.
or so
And,
expenses, and then
So the timing of that was a little bit, we've literally got as much money as we could get in property tax advances from Hamilton County. They put out a schedule. They're better about, being upfront about what the schedule's going to be.
Oh, good.
So we've maximized that in terms of getting our requests in, waiting for them to give us the money. Actually, our advance in January, or actually in February. So January, we got a little bit of funds that kept us above the 9 million. In February now, we did get 82 million, which was a significant advance based on when the property tax bills were due. So that was all the money they had collected at that point. We are anticipating another advance. We don't really know what that will be next week, late next week, I think. So sigh of relief that we weathered that storm to this point. But it is fundamentally a problem that is going to continue as we go forward, either borrowing money, even if it's short-term money, to make sure that we have enough to get through that period.
some of you will remember 2 years ago, we did a tax anticipation note in December to just do a short-term borrowing, just so we had the cash on hand. And then we paid it back once we got our property taxes in, so. Avoided that this year, but we definitely cut it close.
But it is a tool in the future.
Yeah.
I'm just asking for clarity, so you're saying, kind of considering like the borrowing mechanism or the tax anticipation note for the month of January because of the, I guess the money that is going out for those 3 payroll periods, or because the cash balance is low there? I'm just trying to make sure I'm.
Yeah, it's like this is the lowest the cash gets, and it's just because of how property taxes come in. So like again in February we're great now. We got $87 million, but until you get that, you're kind of stuck. So it's it's like a short-term borrowing to kind of level out your payment schedule, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Mr. Crosset?
Thank you. You said it was a 3-pay period month? So are we a 26-pay period organization?
We are.
And would there ever be consideration to being a 24?
I would love that in so many ways.
I would too, I agree. But is that just by contract that's probably never going to be able to really be negotiated?
It is something we would have to negotiate with our unions.
Yeah. And one thing might be interesting, even though we're a 26-pay period organization, is there a way to manage the cash flow on the back end as if it was a 24? So that your cash outlay per month is, I don't know, it's just, maybe that's asking Kevin too much. Just an idea. I mean, that's some experience of my own career. We used to do some of that sort of thing, but. Just a thought, but no response needed.
Thank you.
The other thing I would point out on when we did the borrowing 2 years ago, we were in a little bit different position in that our long-term investments were really tied up. So instead of doing the tax anticipation note, we could have liquidated some of those items, but we would have taken much more of a hit at that time because of the way things were, the market, the way they were structured. This year, we did actually liquidate some of them because our advisors said it won't be much of a hit. Actually, it's still a net positive to go ahead and liquidate some of those items. Again, going forward, now our long-term, it's a mix of investments. It's short and long-term, but that portfolio is less than it was 2 years ago.
So one of the things we will do once we get kind of through the full tax settlement is move some money out of, best way to say it, move some money out of our checking account into high interest savings and into investments to kind of rebalance that. That's part of our cash balance policy is we have a floor and a ceiling, and so as we kind of get too much money in a kind of our checking account, we start looking for ways to earn some interest on that.
The 24 versus the 26 pay, that would require negotiations.
Certainly.
And I know from previous experience, part of the 26, 24 is that it's the amount of money that we actually pay people that makes it difficult to go to 24. It would be helpful for us, but not necessarily helpful for them, perhaps, if that's part of the issue.
Karen looks like she.
Well, I know, I keep looking over there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just comment briefly.
Please.
This was proposed a couple of years ago, and the teachers resoundingly voted it down. There was a great deal of opposition to it, I think mostly because of cash flow issues for teachers and the way things come out of their automatic banking record or bank accounts. So obviously, it does have to be negotiated. I'm not saying, we always entertain things that the district brings us to negotiate, but couldn't be done unilaterally from our view, and I think
Absolutely.
yours as well, so thank you.
Agreed.
Cool. So probably no, Mr. Crossett, moving on.
The question was, would you like it? Yes.
Ashby here as well. Does that in any way impact you all? Okay.
Either 26 or 29.
Okay.
That's their folks.
Yeah.
Actually, I was going to propose at 12.
Historically,
May not even be funny.
I was gonna say historically, we did have people
We
on
haven't.
12. Yeah.
We have done it.
Before my time, but we definitely had folks on a 12 at one point.
Yeah. It's tough.
All right.
Okay, let's keep going.
So I think as a long-term discussion that it's important to understand this general fund issue. Anyway, I think that's an important discussion. The next slide is the statement of cash flow relating to just January and then fiscal year to date, if Mike wants to talk on that.
It's kind of all the stuff we've already talked about. 3 pay month in January, so you can see salaries and benefits are way up. Cash is way down. Luckily, we got a very nice advance in February. So I would just keep going.
Please.
Next slide, this is comparing cash balance for the current year and the last 2 years. I put a note on there for 2 years ago. At that point, we had the 75 million that we had borrowed, as well as we were getting tax advances. So that's why the balance is kind of artificially high because of those two factors. But even last year, we were at 57. Some of that's the timing of the advances and the timing of the 3 pay months, or 3 pays within a month. The next slide gives kind of a longer view of cash balance, so you can see those peaks and valleys. Again, the green is a little off because that's including the $75 million. But otherwise, you can see July, August, we hit our high point, and then around February, March is our next high point. Next slide is revenues by month or year to date. Again, last 3 years, the third column is the current year versus what is budgeted or expected to be received for this year. So we're at around 52% through the end of January, which pretty much is a little bit less than what we've had the last 2 years, but basically is not unexpected. Next slide is expenditures. We're just breaking that down by the blue is salary and benefits. As you can see, current year is about $7 million higher. The 3 pay months did align last year and this year, so that's not a difference. We had August and January both years being that extra pay. Sometimes that causes a difference. So you can see our expenditures are at about 60%, having passed through 7 months of the year. Next slide is where we compare the unencumbered, uncommitted. There's about 28 million. As I usually mention, some of that isn't encumbered for things like tuition, expense that comes through the foundation. We don't have to do a purchase order for those. So that is sitting there and that will be a commitment. But the difference in that piece, part of that is the anticipated amount to pull back to cover the COLA costs that are coming.
So there will be kind of a reallocation of the remaining for salaries and benefits versus the unencumbered,
And that's based on the most recent settlement?
based on the most recent, yeah.
All right, and then preschool. Nothing really new to report here. We did have from December through January an increase of 30 students overall. With all the holidays in December, probably, it kind of rebounded once we got to the new year. But you'll see in comparison to last year, we're still down approximately, or a little over, or approximately 100 kids, I will say. Next slide is tuition assistance summary. Again, this is pretty well tracking as it has been this year. Again, down a little bit. The next slide is the number of students that benefit from the tuition assistance. There was a slight bump up this month. But again, with the ECE grant, this being last dollars in, all of those things that we talked about before.
Apples and oranges a little bit.
So we won't beat a dead horse there. Next slide is preschool expansion. We did make another United Way payment in January, which is the third line down, the middle column of numbers there, the 6.7 is, we had an additional payment included there. You can see the year before was only 4.5. So it's just the timing of those payments is the difference there. Tuition assistance calculation is down, again, based on that last dollar in.
Let me ask a question about that, just that word as we face this budget. The word expansion probably can't remain in our vocabulary.
I do recall you saying that in a previous meeting, so.
We
From
kind
a
of expanded,
standpoint,
yeah.
because we didn't ask the voters to expand the amount of money. And this was the idea when we started this, was to expand quality seats and eliminate preschool deserts and what have you. But it's not really, it's no longer an option, even if it were a goal. I mean, have we reached that market saturation of preschool? And I mean, in Hamilton County, a lot of people, as much as everybody likes preschool, there's a whole group of folks that they'll take responsibility to do that at home, rather than have a kid, come and be here or whatever. And we never were quite sure how many we would really do, and I think we reached some peaks a couple of years ago. But we can't even afford to expand unless we find other sources of income. Is that correct? So when we're planning the budget, we have to anticipate that. That's one of those, 150 things we're gonna have to build into the budget, and one of them is that preschool's not gonna get bigger unless there's other sources, or something else gets cut, or somehow demand changes radically than it is right now. And this is the last dollar in. This,
Yeah.
even the money we show doesn't even show you all the money that actually is is being contributed towards preschool from a standpoint of last dollar in.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to point out, we have a lot of kids in Head Start, kind of Title I funded seats. We have a lot of kids in the state early childhood
Right.
grant. I mean, that's just dollar-wise, that's $3 million a year, that funds a lot of seats. And so, yeah, it's interesting in some regards, because a lot of because of this last dollar in thing, we've been pretty consistent in the first dollars in actually expanding. First dollars in have actually expanded from probably 2 years ago when we got the extra ECE money.
Right.
And that looks like it's staying consistent, so.
And I think there's a lot, I think we should be talking about what the lobbying effort ought to be for us. Number one, they ought to be able to count our preschool kids as part of our enrollment. We would get money for that. The state doesn't do that. But the other piece is that as there is greater and greater increase of interest statewide about preschool, then we ought to be demanding even more money. So, that's what I'm saying, another source, if we can mine the sources that we have that are those first dollars in. So just strategically, if we could make it preschool a target, a topic for the budget discussion, I think that would be useful, as well as a lobbying discussion. Because we better have a lobbying plan, because regardless of who wins the November election, whether it's state legislature or whether it's the governorship, we better have a lobby plan ready to go. An ugly one and a good one, if you know what I mean. Because we need to be first in line in Columbus when that happens. We've done that before, and it's useful. It's very useful, thinking back. So let's make sure that preschool is part of that lobbying effort for us, since we didn't ask the voters.
Have we, just a few things that come to mind, as you speak about looking at other funding sources to support in the preschool endeavor, because we do know that, we do know the impact and the benefits of preschool. And so if there is a way to expand it, obviously we definitely want to do that. So I don't know if there are any other funding sources that we may have not tapped into, and if so, what could those be? But I'm pretty sure that you all probably, I know you do your due diligence to make sure that we have funding sources.
Yeah, it is a really, really complex funding model, but yeah, we pull federal money, we pull state money. We have some families paying tuition, we have the tuition assistance through the levy, so there's a lot of other things. The other thing that we sometimes fail to mention is our preschool disability students.
Transportation.
They are included in transportation in the state funding formula. They're one of the things the state actually funds. So we get some formula dollars for those students as well.
Okay.
It's a pretty wild grid. You can see if you go back a couple slides, the abbreviations in this thing. Like if you go back to that slide.
That's a state footprint.
Yes,
There's
yes,
abbreviations.
all the abbreviations, all the different funding sources. So there's like ECE plus expansion, so that's early childhood grant. There's ECE plus federal. These are all these different ways that kids can be funded. There's all these different options. It is. I will say Director Brooks and her team do a great job of working through all that.
And then just another point to kind of transition. And I think it aligns with what you said. I recall President Craig kind of speaking about maybe the focus isn't so much expansion now. Like you said, we may have met that plateau, but what it looks like in terms of the supports or the quality that we put into our preschool model. So I'm sure that's a conversation that we can continue to entertain as well.
Yeah, I think that is important. I think to your point about the importance of it, I'm sure one of the major reasons that we led the 8 urbans in early literacy is our preschool program. And you could even make it, knowing how far back that now goes, those first preschoolers are in the high schools now.
Probably, yeah.
And indeed, what else did we do well the first year that they tested it, which was readiness. career, college, and military. So it's crucial, and people just around the state like can't believe that we have this preschool program, and we are envied because of it. Jim?
Yeah, I think we've got this strategic plan coming up. I think what might be important is to really study as best we can future demographics. I think we're a little bit at a trough between the baby booms, and so it could be that we have I think our MOU with the Preschool Promise has now got some enrollment basis, and so it could be that we have to take a good look at what that future enrollment is going to look like, especially in the next few years, because the $15 million that's in the levy that just passed will be worth a whole lot less 5 years from now in terms of real spending. So just thought around that. The other thing that concerns me is we get pretty good data on CPS students who are arriving in kindergarten, in CPS in terms of kindergarten readiness. There is really almost no data on the kids that come from Preschool Promise. It's not being measured. So I think that's just something, I don't know if it's even measurable, but I do think that that's, I've had, during my time in a community, you get questions from civic leaders about how's it going? And you can't answer that question regarding Preschool Promise very well. So.
Yeah, I don't know if I quite agree. I think Ms. Shar provides a lot of data and comes to the board, or at least in my time of being present, she's made several appearances to the board and provide a wealth of data. Maybe we just need to make sure that we are having maybe more discussion so that we can talk about how those things align and how it's all working towards one common goal, right? Of making sure that our, little learners in our community have access to preschool and the impact. I do think that, one thing I know about her, she provides a wealth of data.
I've been digging into it, and I've been frustrated because the comparative data is not available.
Okay, well.
So something we can maybe work on.
Yeah, let's make sure that we work on bringing the two together and have that conversation.
I think that would be good. I think, too, one of the things that has always been of interest from the very beginning was what's the percentage of the Preschool Promise kids that are in the private providers that then join in kindergarten, join CPS. And I know that's a percentage I like to kind of watch because, we think everybody needs to be in our system. And so I think that might be some good topics to kind of drill into if we can. That'd be great. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
So next, state and federal grants.
Uh-oh.
Ms. Haygood.
Get ready. All right. So for the grants in January, things are just kind of moving along as expected. We are just right at our target of 40%. Again, carryover is slowly getting kind of incorporated and spin out. We're starting to see contracts and POs coming in. Our total grants did go up just slightly. We got about 200,000 in new state grants, both targeted towards safety through our security department, and mostly towards equipment. So there is a slight increase there. And of course, all those details are available on that summary that you can download. So we're just moving along. Next slide. All right, here's the overall picture. We just hit our target right at 40% in the 7th month of our spend year. This month, we've been busy trying to wrap up last year, meeting with principals to get that last burst of spending, especially for Title I. And we're deeply embedded in 27 budget planning, staffing planning out of Title I, getting the COLAs incorporated once they passed. So we kind of got one foot in last year and moving on like everybody else. But we are seeing a lot of activity definitely in spending. All right, next slide, Rob. So here's where we're at. We're a little bit down below our goal in Title I. We did get a little more carryover than we had originally planned. So we're meeting with the superintendent and others to spend out that money. So that's the main reason for that, is because our total Title I went up a little, which is always good. We've got more money, not less money. Other than that, we're at or above target on most of our consolidated grants. and finishing out plans for the year.
Dan, can you talk just 2 sentences about the reallocation process? I think this is kind of fascinating with the federal, with the grants and
Of the
carry.
run.
Yeah.
As far as what they, like, we're awarding the sweeps out. Yeah, so we really have 3 award periods for the federal grants. And so when we get our initial award normally in June, this year it was a little later, the state only actually kind of awards 85% of what they receive from the feds to kind of, make sure they don't over allocate and so on. Then when we complete our FERs, normally at the end of September, that tells us how much carryover we're going to get based on what we spent. But then what they also do in December is they have a sweep period. And so anybody, for example, that, didn't spend 85% of Title I, they sweep that from all the districts. And so then there's another allocation period that happens in the early spring, which normally would be happening right now, where they take all those funds that were swept, even grants that don't have carryover like SSI, and they redistribute it again over the schools that are remaining. And so, there's several kind of procedures that happen. It happens for us and the non-public schools. And so our numbers are always, slightly changing as the year goes by. And I think, as I pointed out last year, they are looking at things now, starting to look at, if you're a district that's repeatedly getting sweeps and they just give you the money back and you don't spend it, and they give it back and you don't spend it, they are starting to penalize those districts. So now they're saying, if we took your money back in 2 or more grants, we're not going to reallocate it back to you again. And then it's just like the same money getting churned over and over. So they are starting to look at those kind of issues. This year, we're not getting as much of that reallocation. What they're actually doing is waiting until July. So this is the first time they've ever done this, is these reallocations are going to come out at the end of the year because of all the delays. And we'll have a little bit of time to spend that extra money with our New Year's grants.
But it has to be spent on previous year, or?
It'll kind of be like sometimes we get an allowance for like a extension on our spending.
Okay.
So it'll be like to kind of spend out from July to September on things that didn't get in time, and,
But that wouldn't necessarily impact the 27 budget.
It's
So
kind,
you're kind of cleaning up from 26 more than having it be part of the equation for 27.
and it's always a little weird. Oh, sorry,
yeah, I
but-
mean, so sometimes it can do like summer sort of stuff, start of the school year stuff. It's kind of funny. It's like magic money from the state that you don't anticipate. It's and when
There's
it
no way to
happens,
predict how much
you
it's going
can't
to be.
predict it, but it's great to get. It's
Yeah.
great to say, oh, we have extra money that we can use on.
And until recently, we had a problem, and I remember this conversation very clearly, almost a year or so ago, where indeed we were not spending all of our grant money, and we were losing out, if you will, on it. And the idea is you want to spend it on the kids for which it's allotted. And so you want that currency. And
Absolutely.
we applaud that you all have gotten this team has gotten far more adept at that. Did you have your hand up, Fortune?
I just wanted to be sure I understood what you're saying. Basically, what I'm hearing is there's more pressure on use it or lose it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the information is
it's-
becoming more public again. They're, putting that information out there for the public to see of what's going to be spent. Grants is always slightly different from general fund, even in our budgeting, because we do have that 3-month overlap, because we have 15-month cycles. So we always are slightly still in last year and then moving to the next year. And then we also have kind of the 2-year award period as far as what applies to expiring funds and sweeps. So it's really not as simple or as clear as maybe general fund, where we kind of really do it on a year-to-year basis.
Matt?
For clarity, these funds or these grants are expected to be spent on this school level, right? Is it incumbent upon I recall from our retreat, so when we're talking about the title funds, these funds are expected to be spent maybe by the principal or the administration, right? It's not something that you all, central office level, you all really get into.
Kind of depends. Title I is built to be a school-based grant. The school improvement grants, which we'll talk about in a second, those are also really targeted at the schools. Like Title II, Title IV are more central. I mean, and they're actually built in a way that you can serve your entire district. You don't have to just be narrowly serving each school. But, Title I's by far the largest allocation that we get, and it is really intended and budgeted at a school level. So schools should be working with their ILTs, with LSDMCs, looking at their data, looking at their one plans and really like targeting spend to hit the needs of that school.
Okay, and so I'm thinking on a school-based level, what is the process, I guess, because I think sometimes, obviously, schools may try to spend, like, for instance, Title I dollars. And I know that there's a whole, I guess, like, application process that they have to go through. How are we educating, individuals on the school level, whether it's the administration or the teachers, resource coordinator, whomever, right, on how to appropriately spend those dollars or what qualifies, right, under these particular grants? Because I think a lot of people may try to apply and then it gets kicked back to say, well, you can't, you don't have access to these funds for whatever reason. So how are we making sure that those funds are being spent and being spent on the purposes that they are intended for?
Yeah, great question. That's kind of what Ms. Haygood's team does. I will say traditionally, our contact point has been the principal or the clerical folks at the school. So a lot of times that's kind of our direct point. So they run most of the questions, most applications through them, and they're kind of the conduit. We have worked to get a more direct reach out. I think Ms. Haygood did not this LSDMC, but the fall LSDMC. We did a whole district-wide LSDMC. She did a whole presentation on Title I spending and went through a bunch of stuff for the folks there to try to get those LSDMCs engaged. I think we did a better job this year with the Title I spending guide that we put out as part of the budget process that had, we rearranged it and really tried to get more into menus. I know we meet with a lot of folks. We may have I guess it's every other week with, but the last meeting I was in, the superintendent was there and we talked about, working towards these menus of things, which I think is a really good concept to say, like, here's some prepackaged things, so like if you identify a need, here are some prepackaged interventions that will be approved, that meet the criteria, because sometimes, the rules can be kind of tough, especially the edge cases. So trying to give people kind of plug and play things. So we're definitely working through that.
Yeah, we also presented at the Principals Academy this summer.
That's right.
We had a really great turnout in response to that as the year started, especially with the new principals that were inheriting budgets. We've worked really hard on providing budget resources to the managers and principals where we have just all kinds of documents available with the kind of things Mike's talking about to help them. But I feel like my team has really worked hard in the last 3 years on outreach and communication and, availability. We have a lot of office hours type things where they can drop in and ask questions. And so we really are really trying hard to expand the information to not just the principals, but the teachers that are making the requests. Definitely trying to get more in touch with ILT, making documents available to them, but it is definitely a challenge.
Yeah. And I would also thank our union partners. I know I've talked to more ILT members, and definitely Julie, Brad, Karen we've had more dialogue, I think, this year than we've ever had of, just trying to help people through that. Why isn't this allowed? Why did this get denied? Can we do this? So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the things that you all have been trying to put in place, I think, are crucial, really instrumental. I just know that there's a disconnect at times, right? And we have funds available. We want to make sure that we're able to utilize those funds. So.
Yeah, I can remember several years ago, it was a very, very hot topic among and between the schools as to the need and the expenditure and what have you for Title I. And then some schools move from not being a Title I school to becoming a Title I school. And that transition takes like a couple of years. And so we don't want to wait the extra 2 years before it. So, and the public doesn't understand that our schools that are Title I schools are going to get more funding. The concept or the perception in the public is that the Title I schools get less money, and in reality, in many situations, they get more money, or at least there's more money available to them. But how properly to spend it is another issue, and I think you are getting better in the process of it, and we know we're spending and not sending stuff back. And I hate to ever agree with the state, but I think the state is right to say, if you don't spend it, or if it becomes a habit, then guess what? We're not sending it back to you. I think that's fair, and that puts the onus rightfully on us to do that.
Make sure we know
How to do it. Yes, exactly. Other items for grants?
Yeah, I just want to also add,
Please.
like, the SLT plays a big role in that as well, because like Mike, and Liz meet regularly with them, and then they are the conduit to their clusters of schools. So they all, we also have kind of a chain of communication through them, like, that they can pass on the information and consult and guide, especially new principals. So they also have a really major role in helping guide those decisions.
Okay.
All right, speaking of all of that.
I think this is kind of a hot topic too.
Yes, here we go.
Yeah, we should talk about this.
So I chose this topic for my special topic of the month because the letters did come out finally last week, at the end of last week on Friday.
Let me stop you. We're 2 months ago, there was a list of schools that needed improvement, and that list had dwindled or what was it, the one that you talked about a couple of months
Right,
ago? Is
so-
this the same, a
Absolutely.
different set of schools, but is that the same list?
Right, so I think a
same.
month or two ago, I talked about those two grants in particular, which is a supplemental school improvement grant, Fund 536, and the EOEC Expanding Opportunities Grants. And so those are entitlement grants, and the receipt of those grants for schools depends on this identification status. And those two grants also receive a lot of focus and attention from our state support teams. Because they do, boost the abilities of those schools to provide interventions. And so we've been waiting for the new identification of our schools for next year as we're going into the budget cycle, because again, they're trying to hire staff, figure out what they're gonna do, but we really don't know how much money they're gonna have or who's gonna have it. And so we're halfway there. Like I said, Friday afternoon, I think about 3:00, the letters started coming out.
Superintendent shared it, I
To
think,
the
in her
principals, yeah.
update.
Now, the downside is they don't know the amount of funding yet. We had a couple meetings with that team this week, and the state does not have that allocation from the federal government yet. So they don't know how much money they're getting. They know how many schools, but they don't know how much money they have to divide it over. The amount of money each school gets depends on the status that's been identified. Traditionally, it's been around like $100,000 for the supplemental school improvement grant. But we really won't know because, again, they've picked the schools without knowing the money. So if the money's cut in half, obviously the allocation will be cut in half. But I just wanted to provide some background on what it really means and how these schools get identified and the different statuses of the schools. Because it's not really just about getting the money, it's about what that means for the school's choices, the staff they're hiring, and so on. And so, again, every 3 years they're identified and receive funding, and they have that much time to make the improvements that should boost them out of the status. And so there's 3 categories of that you can be put into as a school. The one that receives the most support is called Comprehensive Support and Improvement, CSI. And there's also a status within there called CSI MRI, which means more rigorous interventions. And so that means for us, for example, last year we only had 4 schools that were CSI because they all stayed in identified status and they stayed in the most critical status. Now they're kind of up a level that basically y'all need to do something. These schools
Right.
have been at this level for now going into their second cohort. And, we're expecting you to show us some results with that money. And so even though it's one status, there's kind of 2 tiers within that. And so that's based on the report card data. So this is based on 25 report card data. So that's why it takes a while to get the announcement, because they wait to get the report cards, they analyze it, and then they identify the schools. So that's basically looking at attendance, graduation rates, and just overall report card status. So we have 6 schools going into next year that are on CSI status. Additional targeted support and improvement is one level down from that. It's based on subgroup performance. So CSI is kind of the overall school performance. You get into ATSI and targeted support based on the performance of these identified subgroups. So we have 6 new schools joining or being identified as additional targeted supports. So they're going to get a little bit less money, usually about 70% of the award amount as the CSI schools. And again, it's the lowest 5% within these different subcategories of students that they believe need additional interventions to be successful. The thing some people kind of don't get is the targeted support and improvement schools. We've got 3 of those this year, going into next year. They're in the lowest 2% with a report card rating of 2.5 or lower. The thing is that they're identifying those schools for us to offer, additional focus, but they don't get any funding. So even though they've been identified, they're not going to get any extra funding
Well,
from
in
the
the
feds.
reality, the funding is really so minimal anyway. I mean, that's what's crazy. I mean, it's a mandate, you will do this, but you'll do it with this quarter and this dime. I mean, and is it my understanding from, maybe I read this wrong, from the superintendent's update, that we now have 13 schools identified?
We have 15 identified, but again, only 12 will get additional funding.
So 15 instead, I must
So
have
we
missed
had
a
about,
couple.
well, I think we had 16 in the previous cycle. We only had 4 this cycle. All 4 of those, again, have moved into more rigorous interventions. And then we have 3 in the TSI.
Because, we're way too much in the weeds at this point in time, but looking at this, at least the list that we got from the superintendent, it's quite interesting in that at least the 13, and I must have miscopied, but it's fascinating because out of all of that, more than half of them we have already addressed. Because 4 of them are now middle schools instead of being elementary schools. The high schools, we have at both Aiken and West High, we have eliminated the 7th and 8th grades. So that should be a major emphasis, I think, a big difference. And if you look at it, there's a couple of schools like Taylor and Douglas where we've added students. And the students we've added are coming from schools, I think, both times where there's been higher achievement in that other school. So it's and part of that, I want to make this very clear, part of that is not happenstance or, oh, wow, what a coincidence. This was superintendent looking at our list of schools and trying to concentrate, and this happened also in ad hoc, concentrate on the schools that needed work and needed more kids or less kids or a new vision or what have you. So this is very, very important to be looking at. But I mean, wow, we're already with 80% of these schools, we've already done something actually bigger than strategic, certainly way bigger than tactical. So I think this will be a game plan for us. And a couple of those schools, I believe, probably don't need to be here anymore, too.
If you want to go to the next slide, Rob. Yeah, so
Just to add that, so looking at the schools that are here, I would say that there needs to be support in these particular schools. So yes, there has been maybe a strategic approach of maybe separating some of the schools out, creating the middle schools or the junior high, separating them out from the high schools. But I do think that this is highlighting even more the urgency and the need that is there. So it really is incumbent upon us that we are making sure that we're just as strategic with how we're utilizing the additional funds that are going to be provided to us from the state, to make sure that we are addressing these particular areas to improve. Now, how long, is it 2 years or 3 years that they have to come off of the school improvement?
They re-identify on a 3-year cycle, but you can fall out On a yearly basis. This talks a little bit about
You
the
can
exit
improve
status.
enough
Yeah, you can, right.
to fall, that you're not still on the list.
Well, yeah, once you're identified, then they'll focus on you and continue to look at you from
Yeah.
year to year. And so the list can change from year to year. So especially like the TSI schools, they might fall off by next year if they meet the status. So like for ATSI schools, if they don't show success within 2 years, then they'll next move up to CSI status. Just like we saw with the 4 schools that are in it right now, they've been in it for several years. Now they've moved up to the CSI, more rigorous interventions. And so they follow those schools and, they can go up and down or move on or off. And it is lagging, like you said. All of this data is based on how we were designed last year. We haven't seen the new report card to see what is the impact of the middle schools. So, that'll be really interesting to see what those results show us. But once they've been identified for next year, like they're going to get their money for all of next year, because the award doesn't really follow the identification. They're identified in January, but the award happens, in July. So it's a little bit, off kilter of the timing.
Just hypothetical, so if a school has been on the CSI identification status for a while, what is the response then from the state? So if it has not shown improvement based off of the the state funding that's provided and, trying to make sure that interventions are put in place to address those particular concerns, what is the response from the state in the event that hypothetically we are not reflecting any improvement or growth?
Can you go to the next slide, Rod, so we can see that?
I'm moving you along, okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
So this is the slide that has the identified schools. And so like exactly what you're saying, the 4 schools at the bottom, Odell Owens, GDA, Virtual, and Western Hills, those are the ones that had it this year that are now in the more rigorous intervention status. And I mean, I feel like from my
The
perspective,
reason why virtual needs to actually no longer be virtual.
and it's my opinion that we do need to do something at the district level, because now there are going to be new requirements for those 4 schools. They can require the principals to participate like in a cohort at the state level for training. They're going to have special requirements for their one plan for SMART goals to reading and math. The state's going to be very involved in seeing like, what are we doing to improve those schools?
Which of the 4 schools?
The 4 at the bottom, Dr. Odell Owens,
Starting there.
Gilligan, Virtual,
Owens
and
needs to be
Western Hills.
redesigned. Gilligan has just been redesigned. Virtual has no reason for continuing to exist in its, the way that it's functioning now with its graduation rate. It's an embarrassment. And then Western Hills is a very difficult plan. And boy, I think more and more focus needs to be at West High than we're giving it.
I mean, they're
So-
also
so-
going to be more involved in our fiscal, like
Yeah.
they can come in and look at our budget. They're going to look at what we're spending money on. Like I do feel like we need a district level,
And some of this, a lot, we're spending an awful lot of time here, and we have other things that we must do. But this is the kind of topic that should be brought to the committee of the whole, talking in terms of academic instead of where the decimal point is on a particular test. This is stuff, this is how each of our schools are succeeding and how they're being perceived and who's gonna get more help to do it. Jim?
Just a quick question. You said the money's about 100,000 per school?
That's what we're expecting. This
Pitiful.
year it was
So-
more
so-
because there were
So there's a lot of scrutiny, but not really necessarily the kind of funding that would help transform the school's situation. Would that be fair to say?
That's true, but in the
Yes.
administration of every grant that we get, every ESSA grant, Title IV, Title II, the criteria speaks to, funneling those funds to our most needy students, our most needy schools. So it really should be taken into consideration at all spending levels, that we're supporting those schools in every way that we can. It's not just about Title I money, it's not just about
Got
this
it.
$100,000. Like, from the state's perspective, they should be our highest priority kind of across the board. that's a lot to ask,
Yeah.
but that's
Okay, got it, thank you.
easier to say than do.
They're
But
looking at the cumulative amount of funds that are coming in to say that there should be an
Title
overall
IV,
package.
yeah, Title II, train their teachers, work with their teachers. So,
Yeah, I think,
Okay.
like you said at the beginning of this, Ms. Bolt, this is a good example of where finance digs into the financial side of a topic.
Right.
To kind of arm the members of this committee, but this is now, but this school improvement is a bigger conversation
That's
that I
right.
think really is a Cal conversation.
It is a Cal, and I think we want to kind of suggest that.
I think you guys are forewarned on the financial side, so
That's
good.
right. Perfect, okay.
We're going to submit the quarterly spending report as written.
Okay.
For sake of time and
I love it.
energy, and I think the next topic would be the budget and 3-year forecast, if we're ready to go there.
I'm ready. I just can't say 3-year forecast. It's not in my,
Yeah, like I looked in the work plan, I still wrote,
you can't help it.
it's ingrained in my brain, it cannot go. It's like cross-county
love
highway.
it.
All right, so the PowerPoint will likely be about the same for the board meeting on
Sure.
Monday. We went ahead and posted it, just to give preview for everyone. Just kind of go over just some of the basics to start with, and then we can dig into the numbers that we've come up with. In terms of forecast basics, the new deadline is, as we've talked about, is the end of February. Some challenges with that, and I think I talk about that in a later slide too, is the tax settlement for the first half will not be completed prior to us doing this. In the past, when we were doing it in May, we had all of that statistical data. So it causes us to be
back to your
estimating
question.
that a little bit more at this point. I think I'll talk about that a little bit more later as well. The forecast period, again, requires the forecast to be for current year budget FY '26 and 3 additional years. You'll notice on there, it still includes 30. Our software allows us to do a 5-year forecast, so we're continuing to do. We basically 30 is flat, just so that at some point we'll probably take that extra year off. One key point is the forecast only focuses on general fund, so it doesn't touch state and federal grants. Those are pulled out. It does reflect some of the debt burden that comes from the general fund, so we do transfers out from general fund each year to cover some of those current debt payments. So that is reflected in terms of transfers. Forecasted notes will be submitted to the board on Monday. To meet that deadline, per tradition, we usually include it in the treasurer's report.
Yes, apologies for the 73-page treasurer's report.
And then once it's
I'm sure you saw my
approved,
emails.
there's a process where the EMIS department will upload our forecast to meet that requirement. Next slide is new factors since the October forecast. So it's only been about 4 months, which usually we have like a 6-month window, but there's been a lot of activity in that 4 months, particularly related to property tax reform measures. And you'll see, based on what we were doing in October versus what we're doing now, how we're modeling those changes do have a pretty big impact in terms of taxes. So some of the key points, and we've talked about these before, but House Bill 129 revises the 20 mil floor calculation to include fixed sum levies. So where we were at the 20 mil floor, which allowed some growth in our tax revenue, now that you include fixed rates, we're in the 34 mil range. So it's going to be a while before we ever would get back to the 20 mil floor. So that's part of the design of the law, is to keep that potential growth flat based on value changes. House Bill 186 limits revenue increases associated with the 20 mil floor to inflation measured by 3 years of gross domestic product deflator change. So that's a new provision. Just to give you an example, inside millage is set at 4.19 mils. As values increase, the amount collected on the inside millage would increase because it's just values times rates. However, what this law does is says it cannot be more, that growth cannot be more than the gross domestic product deflator change. So the only time that, or where that really comes into play where you have significant value changes is that every 3-year cycle. So traditionally on a 6-year cycle, you have a full reappraisal, and then in the middle, you have a triennial update. With those, historically, inside millage would give you a little bit more of a bump. Now they're saying, you know, calculate the bump, and then it'll say, well, wait a minute, inflation has been this over the last 3 years. It's gonna hold that growth down. So we have a slide, and we can talk a little more about that, but just to give you the basis of that. House Bill 335 caps inside millage. I guess I jumped ahead to that one. But both laws kind of do the same thing. They hold down the potential growth in revenue. House Bill 96 was a provision that allowed counties to to piggyback on the homestead and rollback. This is different from some of the other provisions in that the taxpayer would receive the benefit of it, but the government entities that receive the tax revenue would not be reimbursed for it. With homestead and rollback, we do get reimbursed from the state. This piggyback provision would have been a direct cost to the district, to cities, to libraries, schools.
And that's where we had one of our many victories in
Yes.
dealing with the bullies in Columbus. Because we have a good team here internally, and also we have an elected group of folks at the county level that are supporting CPS schools. And that would be our auditor, our, is it the prosecutor and treasurer, yes.
Commissioner Dreehouse.
And obviously Commissioner Dreehouse and our commissioners, Commissioner Dreehouse and Commissioner Dumas, very supportive of us. And again, we are the envy of a number of other counties that didn't have that kind of support and lost money. And we're appreciative and thankful.
So that's certainly one positive aspect
Cool.
that could have impacted us.
Just
in a
keep those
negative
three
way.
people happy though,
Yes.
and the commission.
Keep the commissioners and keep the budget commission happy.
Yes,
Yes.
there you go.
Because that is a provision that can be revisited, so we'll
Sure,
just continue
annually,
to
that's my
advocate
understanding.
for that. Okay, next slide. If we go there. Okay. Thank you. Just some other challenges to consider. I touched on this a minute ago in terms of tax revenue. Again, the first half settlement will not be done till end of March, early April. One reason I point that out is because when we looked at the fall settlement, our collection rate was down pretty significantly. And it really related to Board of Revision cases, public
Which we're
utility
gonna,
challenges.
that's coming up this month, I believe, isn't it? That we're filing. I think I have something to introduce.
Yes, there will be a resolution on Monday to challenge the property tax values of a number of commercial properties where we believe they're valued too low, and so.
Okay, great.
So anyway, I'm just prefacing that with the forecast. We're using our best intelligence, our best intel at this point, based on collection rates in the past. I think because we did have high value increases, therefore we've had higher number of challenges from commercial businesses challenging at the Board of Revisions as well as some residential. So the next thing, obviously, once we get the settlement, we'll update you if there's any significant changes at that point. Commercial industrial property owners, again, challenging those. Public utilities, we talked about that. So now the interesting thing, I looked at one part, trying to look at some of the data at the county to see if I could glean what's coming. And I looked at one taxpayer, commercial property in particular, they had a $7 million delinquency, which obviously the school gets a large portion of that. Their current first half was $32 million. About a week ago, they paid $25 million towards the current. So they're still challenging $7 million of the current half, and they didn't pay the delinquency, which is another $7 million. So that one commercial property, essentially, we could be getting 14 million, or we could be getting 0 additional. There aren't that many of those parcels, but just to give you an example, I mean, that's a pretty significant difference just related to one parcel, so. Okay, so the next slide shows, sorry, Rob, forgot what I'm doing. I have control of the clicker right now.
You guys can't both be clickers, then you're double clicking.
So I like this graph
Better than double dipping.
because it kind of gives you a very wide picture of just real estate property taxes revenue. So the first 5 years on this graph are actual data. You can see some little tweaks in there, some little bumps. It was basically due to the 23 reappraisal. So in the other complicated thing, property taxes are levied on a calendar year, collected on a more or less on a calendar year. We receive them on a fiscal year. So from 23 to 24, you can see there was a little bit of a bump, and that's because we had 6 months of higher collection. The next year, we had a full year of higher collection. So that little stair step is typically how that works. Now, what you're seeing in 26, there's a slight dip for a couple reasons. One, like it talked about the delinquencies, the collection rate, all of that. But also, that year is typically the year that a lot of board revision changes happen. And so going back historically, if you look from 22 to 23, you can see there was a decrease. And that was, again, the effect of the board revision changes. Now, going forward, talking about all the property tax reform changes, you'll notice there's no significant bump. It's as flat as you can
So that's
get.
why it's flat, is the reform?
This is
in
property
quotes?
tax reform. This is, and specifically, this is a change of not being on the 20 mile floor. So the law that passed that moved all of our fixed sum levies to count against the 20 mil floor means that our tax revenue is going to be flat like this. The only benefit we will get in tax revenue would be new construction. You get that for a year. New construction or ending CRAs. I mean, that's probably a bigger thing for us. It's just those tiny little increases. You can see there's little increases here and there. Those are the bumps. Yeah, the only other way we will get more tax revenue would be to have a new levy put on.
Where does reappraisal fit in? Is there a reappraisal year there?
So one interesting thing with that, the Ohio Department of Taxation has realigned some of the years.
Yeah,
And so Hamilton County would have had full reappraisal in 29, is now moving to 30. So it's going to be a 4-year gap instead of a 3-year gap.
so our board needs to know that you're looking at the revenue for taxes, revenue in 2030 is going to be the same as it was in 2025.
Yep.
Roughly.
So there's not a lot of dialogue or debate about whether or not we need more money and probably need major sorts of reorg in order to readjust and I guess make some kinds of cuts too. But go ahead, I'm sorry I interrupted, but I heard something about reappraisal, so we wouldn't get it now until 2030.
Yes. And
And the only lift we're going to get in 2030 is inside millage.
Right,
up
pitiful.
to the rate of inflation, right? So we don't even get that. But yeah, traditionally you would see, and I think I shared this graph at the retreat. You can see kind of the stair step of property taxes. We went back, I think, 10 years back to 2016. That stair step is gone now. And that, I mean, that is the intention of the laws that were passed.
I think,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Cross, that it would have happened in calendar year 29, and now it'll happen in calendar year 30. So fiscal year 30, we won't see it yet until that next year. But they realigned some of the bigger counties. Apparently, there were several large counties that all happened the same year, and they were worried, I guess the legislature, ODT, was worried about, big bumps in 29 for certain counties, and so there, it was just
And
realigning.
big, you may not be talking geographic counties, you're talking in population counties.
Perhaps, yeah. Yeah.
there you go.
I shouldn't speak for them because I
I
don't
don't
know
know.
all of the factors that went into it.
Jim?
So if I remember the last chart that went back 10 years, it was maybe about a 4% per year increase. And just looking at these last 5 years, it's maybe only about 3% increase. But that's what we're losing, is we typically would get a 3 or 4% increase per year on average that we no longer will get. So in other words, we're really not going to be keeping up with inflation anymore.
Not even close.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, so the next slide, just some other factors I wanted to highlight is, the $48 million tax renewal that was approved in November for a 10-year period. You'll notice if you look at the October forecast, that was still in a renewal category because we didn't know, wasn't approved. So now if you compare that to this year's forecast, it moves up to the real estate and personal property lines because it was renewed. Tax increment financing renewal of the agreement with the city of Cincinnati. That anticipates an additional $5 million to be received annually. They did make a one-time payment during this fiscal year to try to make us whole for this year. That's built in as well. Fair School Funding Plan. So just wanted to talk a little bit about, there are two types of districts. There are formula funded, formula calculated and driven districts, and then there are guarantee districts. We have in recent time been a formula district. So when we calculate our number of students, run it through the Fair School Funding, the state funding formula, we get a dollar amount that was higher than what the guarantee is. Starting next year, because of the way our property wealth has gone up, it implies that we have more capacity at the local level, so it drives down our state revenue, and we also get less state revenue. The good news, I guess, is that there are guarantees based on 2020 base numbers and 2021 base numbers, certain factors. Some are 20, some are 21.
Say those years again, Kevin, just so we're clear.
20 and 21 is the base.
And we're in 26.
So as the formula became out of balance, we've talked about these things before, the base cost inputs were not updated. So they're stuck at 22 values. That hurts us in terms of funding. The property values, the income values for residents were all increased to more current numbers. The effect of that is to also hurt the district's funding amount. So it's an imbalance. If the funding formula was working properly, everything would kind of move together and you would come up with a calculated number.
Those base inputs would have been increased as well.
Right.
If it was working the way it was supposed to.
Right. So the effect of this is starting next year, over half of the districts go on the guarantee. So essentially the formula is not working the way it's meant to work for over half of the districts in the state.
That's crazy.
So the effect of that is our state revenue, I guess actually is probably shown a little bit better on the next slide.
Well, here for lobbying as well, we need to have the fair funding formula back, and it needs to be updated and current in reality.
Yes.
Yes.
So that it works the way it was intended to work.
Yeah, because we wouldn't have lost that much. I mean, we lost some from the state, but we've lost a lot more by them suspending the fair funding.
Yeah, I mean,
millions more.
So this is how it's modeled using the guarantees.
Okay,
This is my personal opinion, is what if they decide next year they don't want to
sure,
continue the guarantees?
I mean, if you remember the last budget bill, one of the proposals
yep,
was to get rid of those guarantees. Or
Either
reduce
reduce
them
or
by,
eliminate.
start rolling them back.
anybody that's involved with public education that isn't watching this upcoming election very carefully or decides not to vote, is making a big mistake.
But starting in FY 27-28, those bars would go this way, would go down if the guarantee was not in place. The positive is, with the guarantee in place, we will continue to see very slight growth or holding us afloat. It changes a little bit based on enrollment, so whatever your enrollment was in
Right, right,
20
there's-
versus your current enrollment, which in our case has actually gone down a little bit. So all of those things go into that calculation. Sure.
So 2021, that was an appropriate use of the fair funding formula?
No, that was
make-
another nuance that will drop off after
That's
this
a
year.
big number.
So what happened at that time, the state did pass-through funding.
Pass-through funding,
And so kids that were CPS resident students enrolled in community school, the money would flow
remember that,
into
yeah, and then
CPS
flow- okay.
and then it would flow back
I
out.
got it.
So that money came in, but it essentially went right back out.
Right, so potentially restating 21 to show that effect would be more helpful.
Yeah.
I get it. So the
Like 24 is probably,
24 is a good benchmark.
I think that was the last time that the things were aligned. I believe that was like the high point of the fair school funding plan, if I remember.
Yeah, and there may have
they
also
had
been.
adopted it, and it's maybe first year happening or something.
Yeah.
Something, I don't know, yeah.
But
The years all kind of blend together, but that may have included additional student wellness funds that we had. There was a year or two where we received those additional.
So going out the projected, assumes the guarantee is in place or not?
Yes, it does assume that.
Yes, okay,
the guarantee is current law, so,
I see.
yeah, but I mean, like Kevin said, the good news, but for the guarantee, this would be a lot worse. I mean, if you run this about the guarantee, I
And
mean,
and
I
when the
see-
legislature figures that out, they'll
Yeah, it just-
they'll
yeah.
eliminate it.
Yeah, our unrestricted aid drops
The
about,
minimum that we get, and if they were using the fair funding formula with those older inputs, our money would be less. Is that,
Well, they are using the older
Yes.
inputs.
but
Yeah.
If they were to update the inputs, then our formula calculation would likely be a little bit higher.
yeah, the current unbalanced formula would continue to drive this graph way down.
got it.
If you updated both sides of the formula, I think you would see the graph go the other direction.
Thank you.
All right, the next slide is kind of the summary that we usually include here. You'll see the yellow highlights is where we're projecting the end of this year cash balance to be, or fund balance to be, 39 million. And we talk about this every year. The board had committed previously to appropriate and budget amounts within the projected revenue. So what the current forecast does is very reliant on that commitment. And so the expenditures are really modeled here to fit that level of budget, that level of target. So the next slide, this kind of puts all these things into perspective in terms of local share versus state share. So for FY '26, 68% of the state funding is, or actually local and state share together. 68% is from local sources. So that's taxes, that's TIF, that's CRA, all of those things. And then the 31% is the state share as a percentage. You can see, and we've talked about this before, back when school funding was ruled unconstitutional, local share was a lot less than 68. So over that period of time, it's continued to shift more of the burden to the local. And you'll see by 30, we're looking at almost 80% of the funding coming from local share, from local residents, businesses, you know, again.
Again, this is a perversion of the formula, right? To say that if you look out to FY30, they're saying that the base cost to educate a student is 8101, which hasn't increased over 5 years. Which,
Essentially, yeah.
okay, that's a fantasy. But that because the district has so much property wealth, that we should pay 80% of that base cost, and the state should only pay 21.
As I always say, Wyoming School District is a wealthy district by state standards, and so is Cincinnati Public. Okay,
Right.
go figure.
Just remind me now that.
Please.
The real property tax revenue is about 320 million rounding, and the state is maybe 125. So that's 445 million. But then in the forecast where it's 600 million, what's the other?
So the other items
Just
are
just to remind everybody.
TIF, CRA, Medicaid reimbursement, homestead and rollback, because there's a separate line for homestead and rollback.
Okay.
There's restricted funding from the state. I don't know if you're picking
But so
that up.
that's more real estate taxes and more state funding makes up most of that.
Yeah, like the homestead and rollback comes from the state, but it's really based on our
It's
property
local. Yeah.
taxes. State restricted aid is like, you hear us talk about DPIA.
Yeah, it might be
Yeah.
helpful to have a chart that links the total forecast summary to those two previous charts of real estate and state money, just to tie it all in. Might be helpful.
Kendra?
Is that a fair suggestion? Okay. I don't mean to.
Kendra?
Yeah, just a general question. You mentioned that, so the state views us as a wealthy district, based off of property wealth. Is that because of like residential properties or commercial properties, kind of like in isolation, like one or the other, or is it just because of the composition of both together? They are viewing that, making the determination to say that we are a wealthy district.
I think it's both. It's adding both of those together, as well as there's a component of the the calculation that includes resident income. So that also, obviously, for all of Cincinnati would be higher than even Wyoming or other districts like that.
Not
So
Wyoming.
there's a component for each of
Right.
those. Indian Hill, maybe. But yeah, there's a component for each of those, and as each of those increase and the base costs don't increase, that's where the imbalance has come.
It's kind of the runaway of.
And it's really by design, because the Fair School Funding Plan has been under attack really the last couple years, and an effort to just do away with that, I will say. Next slide is just to give you a perspective of what we're modeling in terms of district educated enrollment. You'll see the first 5 years are actual. So over that 5-year period, it's decreased 1,500 over the 5-year period. We're basically keeping that flat. We'd like to see growth, and I'm sure there are efforts to do that. But in terms of modeling, that's what we're doing. In terms of, we looked at before, like if we add 100 students, how much is that gonna, it's somewhat minimal in terms of how much extra state funding we would get.
I will say we forecast conservatively, so this is not saying that we don't hope for more students, the district's not working for it, but we like to forecast conservative numbers.
So the next slide, before we get into the real forecast.
Yeah, let's do it.
What we're presenting, just to give you some perspective of if we let the train run down the track and we do COLAs so I have my assumptions here. I'm not changing the revenue projections. We're including the COLA increases that we know. We're increasing step increases, which are going to happen. If we don't make any cuts and we let other things just grow, minimally, this is where we potentially would end up with a negative cash situation we'll say 29, since that's the end of our 3+ year budget plus 3, you know, even at that point, we'd be $158,000 cash deficit at that point. I mean, that's real dollars. That's, what, 25% of our budget, something of that
Our
nature.
$58 million cash deficit.
You
Yeah.
you
Or
said.
58, yeah.
58,
He said
yeah.
thousand.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You said a different.
I was gonna say, that's pretty
I was
good.
gonna say, that's not too bad.
We can go home now, that's all it's gonna be.
If that's our worst case, we're,
We can
Well, the third
pass
year-
that.
The very last year would be 100 million.
Yeah.
So.
but, I mean, yeah, this is a sobering slide. This is a-
We're not there, and we're not gonna go there, but just to give some perspective of the things
Say
that,
those several things again that you just said, if we continue what?
so don't get any additional revenue. So we're keeping the same revenue projection. I have it in the list of assumptions there.
Right, I got it.
Includes the currently approved COLA, which is 2% this year, which is only a 1% since it's a half year. Next year, an additional 3%, because it'll be a total of 4%. That's built in. The estimate we have for step increases, which is between 1.5% to 2%, that's built in. In terms of no minimal cuts, I'm saying if we let purchase services and supplies is probably the only place you can really make cuts because of salaries and benefits being such a large portion. So in this scenario, I kind of let purchase services and supplies continue historically where we are now and what we would continue to spend there. And we know costs are going to go up. So, I mean, that's the reality. If we don't do anything, those categories are going to go up a little bit. And then again, minimal growth for inflation. And again, conservatively, these really are not wild numbers out there.
Sure.
They're somewhat realistic. Unfortunately, our revenue's not going to keep up with that. So the potential outcomes, if that were to happen, is obviously fiscal distress designations by the state. And of course, fiscal emergency situation, you get into where the state takes over operation of the district. So,
And using that chart, we would have to submit a letter to the state what year explaining how we're getting out of the mess. Is that the end of next year that we'd have to be doing that?
probably yes.
So I think that's what we have to really be focused on. It's 3 years down the road, but the state sees something like this, then the state requires us to submit a letter, or at least they used to, and we had to tell them what we were going to do about it, which would mean that to take care of this, we'd have to be listing the kinds of major cuts or changes or what have you. And they don't like it when you just say, we're going to have a levy. That doesn't count. That's not one of the tools they let you.
They don't let you
Quote.
levy your way out of it.
That's
no.
right. So that, I mean, that's the near future.
Yeah, talking to the
It's this time next year.
talking to the treasurer at Toledo who just went through this.
It's awful.
It is quite an exhaustive exercise because you have to talk any variance over $100,000. You have to be able to explain in quite a level of detail,
Yep.
which $100,000 variance is not a lot for a school district of our size.
And in the fall, after the fall forecast, we did get a warning letter about low cash
balances,
balances.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's one of the factors they're going to look at probably again this time as well and say, hey, you look like you're headed the wrong direction. Because we have been, our cash balance has continued to decrease. This just puts it in the
There it
same
is.
format of our summary in terms of, expenditures outpacing revenues, just to give you another visual for that. Okay, so now we'll go back to what we've projected to be a conservative, but I feel realistic forecast. Kind of gives me personal angst as I was going through this because I would like to provide a rosier scenario, but Mike and I have kind of ran the numbers, and with all of the headwinds against us, I feel that this is a pretty reasonable forecast. In terms of total revenue, this would be for the current year, getting us to the end of the year, 632 million in total revenue. This kind of gives what you were asking for, Mr. Crossett, about
Yeah,
the percentage of local versus state.
right, thank you.
Keeping in mind the other also has the TIF, and that's sitting in that piece of the circle. Okay, next slide, total revenues. Again, this is a 5-year actual, 5 years into the future. 21 had that pass-through funding, 24 had the $75 million tax anticipation note. Otherwise, you can see there's just not a ton of,
And the coming year has less money than we have this year.
Yes.
yes. And that's partly because of the border revision changes anticipated, bringing the tax revenues back down a little bit. Another factor, to get into the weeds a little bit, and I've talked about this at previous meetings, Medicaid reimbursement typically runs about $4 million a year. Last year, it was delayed, and so we got it in FY '26. We anticipate getting another $4 million in FY '26 if they're on the normal cycle. So it'll go from minimal to 8 million this year to only about 4 million next year. So there's some nuances like that that are built in here.
The other thing, we did budget, $1.5 million for sale of property in the current year. That's a one-time lever you can pull.
We'll be doing that.
So there's several little factors like that that are built into it. But you're right, that number overall does go down next year. Next slide is expenditures.
Go ahead, sure.
Yeah.
So with the number going down next year, what is gonna cause maybe the slight increase in like 28, and 28 to 30? What kind of change is that projection?
Let me look at the actual forecast. 28. So slight increases in public utilities, slight increases in revenue, slight increases in state revenue. Again, minimal, very minimal, like $1.5 million, which out of, total revenue of 600 million, 6 million is 10%, correct? No, 6 million is 1%.
6 million is 1%, yeah.
But it
So,
is a good question as to
Yeah,
what's going up, and it's not necessarily, you're thinking property taxes going.
It's a little
Or
bump.
local revenue, you're thinking it's more state revenue that would be going up?
again, 600,000 for state.
Little bump in public utilities, a little bump in property taxes.
Couple
Kind
bumps.
of as these border revision cases
Okay,
get dis-
let's keep going.
Other, like 300,000, as I looked at those different categories, try to focus on those bigger categories of what's in there. Okay, expenditures, as we, sorry, I gotta flip this one. So we're looking at, 60 or 76% of our expenditures are salaries and benefits in the general fund. So that's why that's such a hard, such a big piece of our budget that is hard to adjust, hard to make changes to, rightly so. And then purchase services are all of those contracts that support our students. And so it's hard to make cuts there as well. But just kind of to give some perspective of where those dollars sit in terms of our total budget.
On the circle graph there about expenditures analysis, it's, over the years, it's very normal for most districts to have at least that 75%. But I can recall when we had far less than that as part of our budget. Too much so much so. Now, part of that might have been, I think people argued that it was the transportation that we were outsourcing or what have you, which I still didn't understand because it was still our money that we were paying out. But long story, or we didn't have the personnel or whatever. But that didn't used to be quite that big. It was actually, I think, even below 70% in my recollection, which was extreme. But so I don't know if that's, we don't need to figure that out, and maybe my memory's wrong. But in other districts, it's probably 85% or 90%. But the size, our size and all this, it makes a big difference. There's so much overhead and whatever that other people don't have in the smaller districts, but
So my thought,
this is an increase, this seems a higher percentage than over the last 18 years.
I would agree.
Okay.
I think, yeah, we are lower than other districts because of transportation. You know, that's about $48 million. A good chunk of that would end up being in personnel. But the other thing I will say is, yeah, personnel does tend to crowd out the other areas, but
Right.
we've also brought in-house, you know, just even recently, the two examples I can think of off the top of my head, one is nursing. You know, nursing was a contracted service until, you know, really last year.
Right.
And then smaller one, but the athletic coordinators, athletic directors, you know, those folks would have been considered a purchase service up until last year.
And 4 years ago, it was a theme in discussion in finance about outsourcing versus insourcing. And I know administration was gonna be reviewing it and looking at it as to what made more sense. Okay,
I think based on our earlier discussions too, another thing, going back to 21, you would have had $70 million expense sitting in pass-through funding,
right.
which would have been purchase services. So if you did the same
That
pie
makes
chart
sense.
then,
Yeah.
that
changed the
would have
percentage.
changed the percentage,
That makes sense.
so.
Transportation is in purchase service.
Yes.
Thank you.
Cool.
All right, so next slide, again, is kind of that longer view of expenditures. The first 5 years, again, being actual,
Big deal.
take out the pass-through funding, take out the tax anticipation notes. It's again, pretty level. The other thing, which doesn't have a lot of impact here, but obviously we had ESSER dollars, so there were some expenses such as transportation and supplies and purchase services that were shifted out of the general fund.
Yeah,
So that's another thing that kind of created the ups and downs in the expenditure chart. Okay, so next is the forecast summary. Again, us projecting what we would be at the end of this year and then hopefully being able to hold on to that cash. What that would look like going forward. Next slide is estimated calendar days of cash on hand. This is a big thing that comes along a lot. If everything were balanced out and equal, we would essentially have about a month's worth of cash at any given time, in this case, at the end of the year. That's not much of a change from
right.
the last forecast that we did.
And ideally, we should be looking to double or triple that number.
Yes.
I mean, that's what I will say, as we look to borrow money, for either as part of a post 2031 bond levy, or if we want to do something in a shorter term, such as like a COPS issue, like these sort of things really matter to the rating agencies. Days of cash on hand, you know, having a positive cash balance, you know, having a significant cash balance. These are the things they look at when they price your debt, when they rate you. And you know, it's like real life. You know, if you're going to borrow money, you know, the people who have the best interest rates, the best credit, save a lot in interest over the course of a loan. And it will be the same thing for us. We've done a really good job of our credit rating year over year, but part of it is being able to hold a cash balance.
And having flat budget after flat budget.
Wanted to ask the question about holding that cash balance, and we talked about having to freeze spending, right? But so that may be possible for a year, but as we're like projecting out, like how do we maintain this hold on this cash balance or that reserve?
Yes. So Ms. Bolton, do you want to ask the question you asked me after Cal? It was a good question.
As long as you answer it the same
what-
way.
are we
it
tracking
ain't
on
in a
this?
crowded
Yeah, you guys are on the same page.
room
We're tracking,
versus-
We're tracking.
We're tracking. I'm telling you,
Track it, yes.
telling you. Did I ask, like, when will we be broke?
You did. Yeah, see, it was a much more direct
I
way
mean,
than
let's just,
it was a
let's
much
just
more.
be real. And Mike's answer now in public is,
My answer is we will not be broke so long as the board can make the tough decisions to keep expenditures down to revenue. And these are tough decisions. The board has been, it's been tough, but the board has done a good job the last couple of years of making tough decisions. Obviously, every year they get tougher, right? And I mean, I think some of this was in the COLA conversation. You know, you talk about, it's increased expenditures, but the downside of it is you're going to start hemorrhaging employees, good employees, right? Because of the market. And so, yeah, the real answer probably is we need new revenue. The short-term answer is the board has to continue to be able to make tough decisions.
And I'm okay with it. I appreciate that answer. I think one thing that will be helpful to the board is doing, to the best of your ability, trying to provide us with what those tough decisions will look like ahead of time so that we actually have time, right, to begin to navigate through those things. We do know that it's hard and we don't want to cut anything, but we do need to be able to have like full scope of what those tough decisions entail and what will be the ramifications positively or negatively to help us, be guided in those decisions.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great, at some point, hopefully we'll have time to come back to the budget conversation today, but that's a great point for that.
okay,
So I think that's all I have.
all right, that's enough. You've really ruined the weekend, actually, Steven, so I want to thank you for that. But no, we want to talk turkey for sure. If we look now at this next item, and we're going to not do a couple of things because the superintendent had to be away for Leadership Cincinnati, but I do want to ask, I think we kind of dealt with some local and statewide trends. Mike, what are your thoughts? What did you want to add there beyond some of the tax reforms?
Yes,
And
as
want to talk about other folks, or
as Rob flips around the slides, I would actually.
please?
If Rob, if you can flip over to the other slide deck, apologies. Yeah, kind of starting on slide 26. Okay, so a couple of these slides are just filler. 26 is our current levies, just so you know it's there. Slide 27 is when things expire. Again, I'm just going to keep putting these in because
Absolutely.
for everyone's, and so no one has to go back and look these things up.
I appreciate it.
Slide 28 are available options. Again, this is background. Slide 29 is where I wanted to stop, and I think to go to your question, Ms. Bolton.
Yes.
This is what's on the ballot in May in basically the tri-state area. Tri-state area, really in the local tri-county kind of area. So Hamilton, Butler, Claremont, Warren. You can see these are all school districts, and they're all on the ballot for May. You can see there are a good number of school district income taxes.
And the kids may have lost the NCH levy yesterday or day before.
Yeah, I saw that. That will not help them have levies.
No.
So I think the big trends are a lot of folks are on the ballot, and that is by design from Columbus. The design is that we should be asking for money all the time, and that we shouldn't get increases based on property valuations. You can see a lot of folks are moving to income tax. I think that is a direct response to the commentary on property taxes. And then also, this ballot initiative for the state to repeal property taxes has kept things at the top of the forefront. And I mean, I unfortunately probably spend too much time on social media, but there's a robust discussion about property tax I try not to get into, but I think some school districts are saying an income tax is a better way to diversify kind of our income, a better way to to not go back to the same taxpayers. But I mean, a lot of these are pretty big ask. I mean, a lot of these, I mean, New Richmond, 8 mills, that is a very large increase. North College Hill, 1.25% income tax, that's a pretty big ask, same with Fairfield, so. Just,
So, obviously, I don't know what direction like we're really considering, but as you spoke about, the income tax has been a topic of discussion for a number of reasons, for a number of districts. What would that potentially look like for us, hypothetically, if we considered an income tax levy?
yeah, so I think the first levy step is this kind of decision of how much we need. And that gets or how much we're gonna ask for, and that gets converted into a millage, right? And then what you do is you ask the Ohio Department of Taxation to convert that into a percentage, right? And that would be the percentage of the ask. There's a couple ways to do. School district income tax is different than a city income tax in one main way, is that it is applied to the residents of that school district. So a city income tax applies to the people who work in the city and the people who live in the city, right? That school district does not do that. It only applies to the residents of that district. And then from there, you have two options. So the one option is what's called the traditional. And so what that looks at is it looks at your state tax return, looks at your state adjusted gross income, and you owe a percentage of that as a taxpayer. The other option, and that's why if you see the word earnings on here, the earnings is a different way of doing the tax. It only applies to what you would call earnings. So it doesn't apply to Social Security, to pension benefits, to investment benefits. It's really like kind of your paycheck earnings. That tends to be a kind of more popular thing, especially for folks who are facing a big property tax revolt. Because part of the messaging is, your senior citizens who are feeling the squeeze, aren't going to pay this tax as well.
Now, are we able to do two different levies simultaneously?
You can. I would say most people would advise you not to. The data generally, a lot of times, is if a school puts two levies on at once, they both fail. Or one passes in a way that's not helpful. I know a lot of times people would do like a facilities levy, like a permanent improvement levy, or a building levy and an operation levy. And if one passes and the other doesn't, you get some really weird mixes. Like we got money to build a new school, but we have no money to actually operate it. So traditionally, it's not something that people stay away from, but it's not impossible. It's not illegal or anything.
Okay, yeah, just asking for clarity.
Other slide?
So that's the round us, impacting us directly on the November ballot. If you go to the next slide, Rob, I don't have the clicker. I think what we've learned is the Children's Services Levy will be on in November. So that will be a property tax. That will be an increase from where they're currently at, as far as what I'm hearing. City of Cincinnati has talked about an earnings tax. I don't have any new information on that, so it's kind of out there. If you hit the next slide, Rob, just to kind of give people an idea. So filing deadlines. So this is filing deadlines and collection deadlines. So the May 2026 election is set at this point. We're past that filing deadline. Anything for November would need to be filed by August 5th. If you're looking at next year, May would be February 3rd of 27, November would be August 4th of 27. And then the other thing is earliest first collections. So you can see there, if you push to next year, the earliest you're going to collect that money is going to be the first half of 2028. So. Any questions on that?
I don't have a question. I continue to believe that, Mike, something that you've talked about, a replacement levy idea where we're going to pass something, but we're going to remove something. as part of a larger plan. And in Mount Healthy, on city council, we did that, and it does make a difference in percentage-wise as to people say, oh, as long as they believe that you're gonna do it. So it has to kind of be part of the language that they're voting on to hold you to it. But I think offering to do new money, we'd have to be able to say we're gonna not do something. I do continue to believe that this coming year is rough, but the following year is rougher. And I think if we were to wait so long, we'd be in that rough year of fiscal '28. I do think this November is going to be a big election year with education at the center of it, frankly, for both the governorship and the legislative and even congressional elections. There's just going to be tremendous focus on Hamilton County and Greater Cincinnati. So right now I'm leaning toward, I don't know what kind of levy, but timing wise, politically, as I've said before, one of the last times that we did big new money, we did it during the primary season when it was Obama and Clinton fighting each other. And turnout among our constituency, women and African Americans, was so high that if you wanted to oppose that levy, you didn't have much of a choice of winning, in opposition, because that's very much our constituency as we look. So I'm certainly leaning towards needing to think about 26 for financial reasons. But I also think it'll have to be part of a package, because I do think we do have to go ultimately to income tax. But I would associate that income tax request as part of the FMP paying off that mortgage, so to speak, and saying, hey, we did it, thank you, and whatever. I think also this fall, people are very well aware that the state's messing with us. And I think that's part of the message too, if we were to go for November in this year.
I will say the press coverage about property taxes has gotten, it seems that people are covering and are starting to pick up on the details. The last articles I've read about school districts, there's always a lot of good background about property tax reform, about the decrease in state aid. So we've said it so many times now that I think it's finally starting to stick, which is.
Jim?
Yeah, it's interesting they've done so much property tax reform, put a lot of effort into that, then why would you abolish all that after you've done all that work? Maybe, I don't know. Right? I mean, that's another thing that pops up into my mind.
Yeah, I honestly believe that even if you put it on the ballot about getting rid of property tax, I believe that people of Ohio would not vote to eliminate property tax. I really do. I don't, because enough of the independent voters and non-aligned voters understand what that actually means. If it's not going to be that, but I do think we have to plan on not being so dependent upon it in the near future. That makes sense. I know it's been very helpful to Wyoming, which was one of the first districts to do that years ago.
To not rely.
Yeah, on property tax, and they've made it impossible for us, not to mention they're still funding 3 different school systems on the same line item. And so you've got those court things happening about the vouchers for Ohio. You've got the reform on property tax taking place. You've got the whole issue of what this is state funding or not funding, and people feeling like the kids are getting shortchanged. So I think that atmospherically, it would be a good time to go from a political standpoint and a communication standpoint, but the board has to decide. But I think financially, I'm very worried about it. But as you point here, FY '28, I mean, the state will be here. They won't be in charge yet, but they'll be telling us in part what to be doing or assessing what we're doing. And we have to avoid that. We avoided that once during Mrs. Ronan's term, yeah.
So for next fiscal year, we have a pretty good feel for what the revenue is going to be. And we also now have solid information about the COLA. So wouldn't it be reasonable to start to be able to make some calculations that are projecting because I think we have a policy that we abide by, that we can't spend more than the revenue. And so I think what might be able to start to have a feel for what kind of cuts we're going to have to make, because no matter what happens, we are not going to get extra money next year. We don't have a levy there's nothing happening. So, that's something we could start to look at now, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
I think it might be helpful to look at that in a 2-year window as well, because it's what cuts we can make now, could have an impact another year out.
Knowing that we can't talk too much about the budget now, but
Okay, you're telling me to shut up.
no, no, not at all. What I do think is, I think that administration ought to bring to us in a very declarative way, this is all the money that you have for the budget. So that's it, period, which obviously laid the groundwork and have been for a number of months laying that groundwork. Here's that. And of that, as we've talked before, you bring to a finance committee next month, this is what the money that we have to spend. What is it that we know there aren't any cuts to, or the things that we, that whatever percentage of that 630 or whatever it is going to be. And so the finance can take that to the board. So the board isn't sitting there trying to figure out what to do with 630, when indeed they only have 250. I mean, I think that we have to focus on that way. And I think people also, I'd sure like to see, I think everybody would, I get tired of just funding who we already are. Because who we already are is, we can't fund. I mean, just even trying to fund what we do right now, we don't have the money to do that next year. Period. So we can't even fund this year based on, we can't fund next year if it's even just the same as this year. What do you call that? It's not the fixed, the obligated?
Fixed and obligated is what we call it.
Fixed and obligated.
But I think we're gonna change the terms up slightly this year.
Please do.
I think I said the same thing in like
Fewer words?
many fewer words.
That's why you're not the chair.
Yes.
I can say, I think we all have said the same thing at one point or
We have
another.
So,
We don't have any money.
all right. So if I may,
You got it.
if I may, I think absolutely the finance committee has two big charges at this point. One of which I think is to get us closer to what a levy ask would be. The when, the how much, the when, the what, the how much, right? I think that's definitely something that this committee is a great spot to work through those kind of ideas.
And what? What kind of money?
Yeah, what type, when, how much. So one of my requests would be, what can administration prepare for you to help guide that discussion?
Well, you started it last month with the trying to figure out the amounts of dollars that we would need to just continue to do what we do, figuring in some additions as well. I mean, it was a good chart to begin with, good presentation. And the numbers you said were fluid, but it was at least an early stab at that. Because I do think we have to also figure in what capital improvements have to be part of whatever ask. It's obvious that we're not, I mean, maybe it's not obvious. I know President Craig's been when he was on finance, very vocal about we have to do the maintenance thing before we can do new buildings. But the reality is, I want to know the levels of the needs for maintenance instead of, this kind of generic giant package of stuff we got about, now almost 5 years ago, when that was first proposed, 4 years ago, I guess. So I think we need to know what kind of capital we're talking about. Like you say, we can ask for operations money and spend it on capital. We can also increase our debt, whether we do COPS, but not all of our buildings are available to that. We need to know that.
Okay.
What else do we want to know about what our thoughts are? Kendra?
I think you raised some really good points in terms of helping us create a base. I do think, as we talked about before, really looking at what we are spending our money on, and I know we can't like contract our way out of it, but being able to look at those KPIs, the ROIs, to make sure that we
Excellent.
are in fact getting the results that we're looking for, and we're not just spending out money, kind of arbitrarily. So I think that would be helpful as well.
Okay. Jim?
Also, I think we have to keep in mind our debt rating, where do we need to be with, that needs to be factored in here too, in terms of a cash balance. And
Absolutely.
whatever else.
And I think it's been said, but just again, I think one of the concepts is get us to 2032. We have a great opportunity, as Ms. Bolden said, that December 31st, 2031, our capital, our bond levy is paid off. It's like paying off your
gonna be
mortgage.
huge.
It is a huge
front
accomplishment
page. That's
from this
front page.
district, to fully fund that facilities master plan. And then obviously the result, the taxes associated with that go away. So I think that is a great chance to do something new and exciting. I think what had been said was, how do we get from here to there? And so I think that's something that we need to kind of factor into our building. Are we looking at a long term, like kind of like a forever levy, or are we looking at how do we get to 2032 with the idea that we could go back on the strength of those accomplishments of paying off the facilities master plan?
And what passed it in those days, what are signature pieces of the district. And so we want to make sure all of our facilities are wonderful looking when we pay these off. So, I mean, that's more of a justification than, for me, very frankly, going to the voters in 30-something, showing that we maintain the facilities and they're still wonderful and they're still good. And I think you figure out which things you might be adding some facilities if need be. I won't say it based upon the need of that school, but I'd also say it's based upon which ward and precinct that school's in. Because it's important that you can't have the West Siders continuing to think that they're in overcrowded schools. And then we go and ask them for a levy, and maybe the East Side is less, all that has to enter into how we sell this thing. And I do think when we do ask for a levy now, I think we share with the voters what the long-term is, like this 3-year forecast, but a 5-year taxing forecast, or what's the whole picture, and try to hold us to it. I think that would be very crucial. So we're gonna spend time next month talking in that, and you bringing some of that stuff in, and everything else that we'd like kind of Mike to bring to us, that would be just communicate directly to him. And Phyllis has got some things to add for the month. Now, we have 2 real quick things we have to take care of, policy, that you wanted to share with us, Mike, and then also the appropriations piece.
Yes, I would like to talk a little about budget, but we can do.
Yeah,
we can do lights
by
quickly.
all means, do
Yeah.
that thumbnail. We just can't have the big discussion because the superintendent's not here. Go ahead.
Yeah, so update appropriations resolution, that's in the agenda for Monday. It's basically allowing us to spend our Title I carryover our title, or actually all our federal grants carry over. And then we need to appropriate some money in our debt services fund because we're paying off one of our sinking funds this year. Again,
that's
more
it,
debts,
that's
paying off more debts.
And that's the chart that you all submitted like 4 months ago, where the debt was, I mean, it was looking good.
We are looking good. So that is all good. So I think unless there are questions, we can go from there.
And the revisions resolution is coming forward too, right? The Board of Revisions?
Yes.
Okay,
It's
so,
actually more Mr. Hoying than me, but yes.
yeah.
But yes. Policies. If you just go to the last slide, Rob. Quickly is, these are by my priority, not so can take comments. Ms. Matt may feel like she's back on policy committee. Feel like she's back on policy
that's
committee.
right.
I know the ones that I'm most interested in, the two, one's insurance in lieu of bond. That's my personal thing, but it's a more modern way. Instead of having the treasurer bonded, the district gets insurance that covers the district and the treasurer. So probably save us some money in the long term, but that's a whole new policy plus some other procedures. The other one that I think will be big is deposit of public fund and cash collection points. So that goes around our cash collections. I think we
What
need,
does that entail?
like all the policies around collecting cash at schools,
Yeah.
who's handling it, making sure it's deposited in the bank account, making sure it's reconciled, all of those things.
I can see where that first one, that's a no-brainer, bring it next month, and I think finance would probably say okay to that, but that second one, that's a big deal.
It's a big deal, yeah. It's probably a multiple,
I've
yes.
actually been one of the ones to bring it up.
Uh-huh.
That's right.
It
a big
may
one.
take a couple meetings to work through. I will say this again, David Conley, who's our financial advisor to the district, has offered multiple times, if the board's interested in looking at a taxation policy, he's done these for a lot of districts. And kind of what it is, it's a lot of education for the board about types of taxation, which I think we do a lot of that in this committee. But the idea is that the board at the end of that creates a policy that says things like, our philosophy is we would do an income tax or a property tax, or our philosophy is if our cash balances get to here, that triggers us to start looking at new money, or we believe in these things. And so it's something to talk about. I mean, it would be a significant time commitment, but it is an interesting way to take all of take the collective thinking of the board on taxation, put into a policy.
I could see where that is post-strategic plan,
It may be.
rather than pre or during strategic plan, perhaps.
Yeah,
Jim?
and I think there's so many moving parts right now that I wouldn't want to set a policy that limits us from not being able to take advantage of whatever opportunities are out there.
That is true as well. It is a moving legislative environment, so out there. The rest of them are actually pretty small. So the only other one that I think the other ones I think are just small rewrites, payment of claims, audit, purchase cards, all those are mostly updates, text updates that just need to be done. And then the final one I think we're not in a position yet to do is to establish a Fund 35. So Fund 35 is used to pay kind of separation benefits to employees. So the district would put money in there every year. It sits in there, and then as people retire, they get, payouts of sick and vacation leave. It comes out of there. The nice thing is, and this is probably for sunnier financial times, is that you put a set amount in every year, you let it grow, and so it basically gets you out of the peaks and valleys system. So it kind of levels it. So
Cool.
cool.
Are there any there that you would bring for us to look at next month? I mean, next month is huge.
So what I would think is maybe we'll do some of the small ones.
Okay,
That can be just a couple word changes.
okay,
To keep momentum going. I think next month will be very huge as we talk budget and as we talk levy. So let's not put a lot of brain power into policies. And then we'll try further in the year
Sounds
to
good.
put some more brain power into policies, if that works for.
and what did you want to share with us about budget particularly?
Yeah, Rob, if you hit like slide 35 here. Sorry for. Oh, my little checkboxes went away. That's no fun. Okay, sorry.
Oops.
Yeah, what I was going to show is the FY27 budget timeline. All the things on here now should have little check boxes next to them, which would make it beautiful. But apparently in the rendering of PDF. Yeah, okay, sorry. I'll remember not to use that. But yeah, all these things are resolved, which is good. Like these are good
So
things.
this thing that you're sharing about the budget right now is that at least we're on target timeline
Yes.
in the process.
Yes, to go to what Mr. Crossett said, you know, now that we have a revenue target for the
Right.
forecast, now that we have the COLAs approved,
Everything.
now the real calculations begin.
And that will be sharing that,
Mm-hmm.
all those totals and whatever, next finance.
Right. The one thing that kind of, we talked about the timeline. I know we wanted to share things with finance. I also know President Craig is trying to schedule out meetings. And I think my absence in March makes it a little odd because I'm out for that second board meeting. But he was looking to have some discussion, potentially a vote on the March 2nd about some part of the budget.
Well, the only part of the budget we'd be really able to ask the board to vote on would be those,
Absolutely.
the
Fixed obligated.
fixed and obligated.
Yes. So,
And I guess we should be, even before that second March meeting, we would be able, that first March meeting, to be able to say what the total is. I could see where you could even do in the first, if, depending upon what's presented, Monday, I think it's the maintenance and capital improvement presentation
facilities
and stuff.
presentation, yeah.
It seems to, you could almost, in the first part of March, you doing a presentation about the total and what the budget total is. And then sharing what you think a list of what the allocated and fixed and whatever would be, and then people vote on it. So they hear it first on the 1st of March and vote on it on the 2nd of March,
Good work. Yeah. So I will.
second meeting of
Take
March.
these March, yes. What we have, kind of the categories are a little different this year, but the first category is what we call legal compliance.
Sure.
Which is very similar. These are the legal things that,
However we want to play it out.
yes, these are the things that are required to run a school district. I think what I will do is send this committee a set of ideas, or basically a document to the committee and say, give me some feedback on the format, the layout,
Sure.
all those things. So,
Well, if you're going to be absent the second meeting of March,
yes.
you're close, aren't you, to having that information that you would be in the second meeting of March available the first meeting of March?
Yes.
And it would make sense if the board had some knowledge that it was coming, so even if on Monday night, it might not be, if there's a little update from the treasurer, I don't know what you're presenting, are you not presenting anything this month?
The forecast.
The-
Forecast is the
But
real
that's
forecast,
it.
but that's it, yeah. And
I
then a
would add
presentation
to
on the
that
second.
forecast what we've just done today.
Yeah,
So there's at least the introduction to it before the first meeting of March, to save that vote without you there, the second meeting of March.
Yeah, I was just gonna
Go ahead.
ask though, as it pertains to the second meeting of March, I know that you're saying that, budget-wise, most of it will ultimately be the legal or obligated costs, which is pretty much just binding, right? But just checking your level of comfortability, in terms of like where we are, if we have potential questions, like, do you feel comfortable with us taking a vote in your absence about certain things pertaining to the budget?
I think if we give the list to the board early and have time for questions, yes, I think the things on the legal compliance are very uncontroversial. You know, it's like debt payments, it's like water, it's like electric, it's things that are hard written into ORC. And
But you would be there the first meeting of March.
Yes.
To answer those kinds of
Yes,
questions.
exactly.
And maybe even be able to vote.
We could.
I think that's great.
Didn't realize we had back-to-back meeting weeks until I looked at the calendar, but I understand between President's Day this month.
Yeah.
Spring break next month, it definitely kind of compacts
Got a problem, yeah.
the board's calendar, so,
Well, good.
So it sounds like it'll be something.
yeah.
Play by ear, gauge, right?
Yeah, I like the idea of sending this committee a document ahead of time, especially for
Please.
formatting and just like, does this make sense? If you read this and, if you've been in finance committee and it doesn't make sense, then I need to go
It's not
back and
gonna make any
rework it,
sense
right?
anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
And that would be normal. It was normal for Treasurer Wagner to share the presentations that would be going to the board, to some finance members to say, does this make sense or whatever? Or do you have a better way of looking at this chart? Or what don't you understand? What don't you understand?
Yeah.
So she could change it. So that makes sense. Let's do it. And then you talk to President Craig about trying to move that vote up, not the second meeting, but the first meeting.
He's got a placeholder in there for
Yeah, but
budget
you
discussion.
talk to
but-
him that we feel comfortable.
Okay.
If it works out, or we might feel
We might
comfortable.
feel comfortable.
Okay.
I might need to see the list.
That's right, exactly.
Make a
I mean, definitely the feedback from the whole board.
Yeah.
Specifically, the feedback from the whole board is we want to see the list.
Yeah.
Like we want to see all the things in the list, and I understand that.
And I want you to be there for the questions before the vote.
Yes.
And I think that takes care of most of the concerns. And we've actually seen that list even last year, a part of it, not the extensive one, but we've talked about this before.
Yeah, we're going to go to a level of detail that I think.
That's as much detail. And we decided, I think, a couple of months ago in finance that we can avoid the line item if we are extremely detailed in this early run. And it can't just be, electric or something, so people have to be confident.
Yes.
Sir,
One last thought that I wanted to
Yeah.
share that's somewhat unrelated to the specific budget for next
Cool.
year. But I love the idea of putting a plan together to get us to 2032. And we're in the middle of strategic planning, and I think our strategic plan horizon is only 3 or 4 years. But this 2032 takes us just a little bit beyond that. But I think we should try to put that 2032 objective in the strategic planning while we're doing this, if that's, can be thought about.
and I think that can come under the guise too of the fact that the board passed that resolution that we wanted both the strategic plan and we wanted the financial piece. So I could see where the strategic plan is a particular length of years, but the financial piece is actually longer. And I think that makes sense. And then one thing to follow up here on the strategic plan, if the superintendent had been here, but I think you'll be able to answer this as well, Mike. So it's my understanding from the updates that I think that the board has received that the strategic plan monies that people are contributing is, there has been a selection made of Bellwether.
Yes.
And what is going to be the role of Bellwether, so that we understand that role and finance knows about it.
Yes, excellent. So Greater Cincinnati Foundation is funding this. The services will be a donation to the district. Bellwether is a national firm. They've got a lot of work. They are going to be kind of the strategic partner. So they're going to be a strategic partner. They'll probably be, helping out definitely the financial stuff at a high level. Rice is also going to be working specifically on the engagement pieces and some of the local pieces. So kind of a mix of both.
But Bellwether is it gonna be, as we talked about last finance, where it was like they did for the preschool promise? Are you opening your books? Are they assessing where we are financially? What's gonna be their charge based upon what you all have talked about with the foundation, or with the, Greater Cincinnati Foundation?
Yeah, I think we're getting ready to the district handoff, but I think there's a couple pieces.
Okay.
Yeah, and part of the pieces is this financial plan, right? Is looking at this big financial plan that probably is a little more encompassing than the 4 years.
And I think that that is a way to, even if whatever the first ask of the public is going to be, that going through, as I've said any number of times too, the facilities master plan is the big deal. And narrative-wise, we've got the new era. Narrative-wise, we've got the 3rd century, somewhere in that span of time. And that does make an impression on people. People have no idea that this district has been here for 200 years. They have no idea. And I think it's pretty exciting. And it comes in the end of the ad hoc effort and a number of leadership changes and all kinds of things we've all been through. We're actually in a good place, not in a bad place.
Just as it stands, and this isn't so much the financial piece.
Yes.
But as we're talking about the strategic plan, we are still waiting to vote on approving the Rice Consulting Group, correct? Because we tabled that discussion.
Yeah, I don't recall voting on Rice. I think
Yeah.
it was withdrawn 2 meetings ago, and it didn't come back, I don't think, that second meeting.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
discussed it at we
But it's-
discussed the strategic plan, but we tabled it at the
In
retreat.
between that time, we got a second proposal from the Greater Cincinnati Foundation. And they essentially said, they added 100,000, they went from 250 to 350,000 with the 100,000, with the intent of that to go to Rice. So even though we haven't
okay.
approved it, that's sort of been that's where I think the proposal is from them and this. So I think that the inclusion of Rice is still funded. Does that make sense to you, Tim?
Yeah, it makes sense. I think from a full board standpoint or perspective, I think we still need clarity there because a lot of things have been tabled. And from my understanding too, the superintendent was waiting to bring back that recommendation.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure if she was here today, she'd have a deeper, a fuller update for sure.
Well, good. Anything else for the good of the order? If not, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you for staying so long. Do I have a motion?